Welcome to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island. Free-flowing talk with a charismatic, down-to-earth host. Join Dean as he interviews and chats freely with his guests, ranging from superstar athletes to politicians, industry titans, and everyday folk with fascinating life stories. Dean educates, entertains, and most of all, touches people's lives. You're listening to the Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean Blechman Show. This is your host, Dean. We're here in the studio today with the senior sports editor of the Dean Blechman Show, Steven Leaderman. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Dean. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How's your family?
Everyone is good. How was yours?
Everyone's great. Everyone's great. Listen, we got a lot to cover today. We last week you covered the NFL preview of the season. And we've got a lot of other sports to talk about today. And let's start with the U.S. Open. A lot of great stuff at the Open in New York this week. And why don't we start with who were the winners, and were you shocked with who won?
Well, starting on the men's side, I definitely was shocked. We have Stan Wawrinka of Switzerland, who beat Novak Djokovic from Serbia. I had Novak Djokovic either playing Andy Murray for the finals. I was expecting one of those two to win. They've been pretty solid the last few years, and with Roger Federer not being in and Rafael Nadal getting knocked out kind of early, I was kind of shocked with Wawrinka taking it over. I mean, he is the number 3 seed, so he is a solid player, but I really thought Djokovic was really going to do it this year.
It was very exciting, very exciting. Who do you have winning? Who did you have winning the men's and the women's singles before the tournament?
Well, before the tournament, I really thought Djokovic was going to do it. And on the women's side, I really thought Serena was going to do it, and so she could take a hold of the Grand Slam title and have the most all-time, beating Steffi Graf, who she's tied with presently with 22. I was also kind of shocked with all the upsets that were going on the women's side. But overall, I was kind of happy to see Angelique Kerber of Germany win. She was the number 2 seed, I believe. And you had the runner-up was Karolina Pliskova of the Czech Republic. She played great tennis. It was a really good finals for the women. So,
Steven, how do you see as far as the upsets? What were the big upsets?
Well, on the men's side, you really you had the American Ryan Harrison over the 3rd seed Milos Raonic of Canada. And then you had the 6th seed Kei Nishikori of Japan over the 2nd seed Andy Murray of England. Even though it's a 6th seed versus 2nd seed, I really thought Andy Murray was going to make it to the finals. And then on the women's side, you had a lot of upsets on the women's side. You had Anastasia Setsova of Latvia over 3rd seed Gabriela Muguruza of Spain, and over Johanna Konta, the 13th seed from Great Britain. So you had Anastasia Setsova, who knocked off 2 big upsets. And you also had Anna Konju of Croatia over 4th seeded and Izica Radwanka of Poland. And then you also had Karolina Pliskova, the 10th seed, who knocked out Serena Williams to get to the finals in the semis.
Wow, amazing. Steve, how you pronounced all those names is incredible to me.
Oh, pronouncing tennis players has got to be one of the hardest things ever.
Very difficult. You did that extremely well. I'm proud of you. So were there, when you look at it as far as milestones in tennis this year, what were the 1 or 2 big milestones that you said?
Well, you had Serena, who I thought was going to take it all over Steffi Graf, which she did not. But she did win her 308th career Grand Slam matchup. And that was actually thanks in part to Roger Federer not playing. So him and her kind of have been going back and forth on single matches for who controls the most Grand Slam matchup wins. So that's a pretty big milestone.
Okay, to summarize the U.S. Open, were there any good stories of a particular player?
Actually, there were. You had Anastasia Setsova, who was ranked 48th, but she was pretty much an unknown coming into the U.S. Open, who played Caroline Wozniacki in the quarters. And that was a big matchup because Wozniacki has been troubled with injuries all year and was unseeded coming into the Open. It's also the 4th consecutive year that an unseeded woman has reached the U.S. Open semifinals, and the 20th time that an unseeded player has made a Grand Slam semifinal since 2001 Wimbledon.
Wow. Let's move over to golf now, Steven.
Sure.
Who do you like going into the final tournament with golf?
So this year, we have the FedEx Cup. So the final tournament of the FedEx Cup is the Tour Championship. I'm thinking that Dustin Johnson is going to take the tournament this year. He played really great last week in the BMW Championship. He won last week. I'm a really big fan of his swing. He's got tremendous power. He can drive the ball 300 yards. His short game is good. I think he's got his head together. He finally won a major this year. The last year or so, he's kind of choked under the pressure. He had the issue. He had to go to rehab for a little while, but he's coming into his own, and I really think that he's got a great opportunity this year, and he's showing it.
Will the winner of the Tour Championship be the winner of the Fed Cup?
Not necessarily, but if Dustin Johnson does pull it off, he will be the FedEx Cup champ because it's based on point system. So this upcoming weekend we have the final tournament, and it has the 30 golfers in the playoff system. So you had Ricky Fowler, who actually fell out of the top 30, so he's 31, so he doesn't get to play in it. A lot of people were expecting him to be in the top 30 to get in for it, but he's not going to. So the top 5 ranked golfers control their own destiny in this tournament. So if they win, they win the FedEx Cup. If another player wins the tournament, the winner of the FedEx Cup will be determined by points acquired over the playoff system. So for instance, if Phil Mickelson was to win, he's ranked number 12, he would need other players in the top 5, 6, 7 to fall in different places in order for Phil to win.
Wow.
So it's going to be an interesting week of golf. I'm looking forward to it.
That's a great summary, Steve. On a personal side, you being I remember a special ed teacher.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're extremely busy with school, very busy with your family, wife, 2 kids. Word has it, you're a hell of a golfer.
Well, I don't like to brag, but I'm a pretty good golfer. I actually just shot my best round about 2 weeks ago. I shot 7 over.
Wow.
On a par 70. So it was 77. Even if it was on a 72, it'd still be in the 70s, 79. So I'm pretty good.
I think you're being pretty modest and humble, Steven.
A little bit. I try not to talk big about my golf game because anything can happen on any given day on the golf course. You have your good days, you have your bad days, but I can hold my own.
Very good. Why don't we move over to what's been going on with college football? Were there any big upsets this past weekend, Steven?
Yes, there was. You had Arkansas, 41 against TCU, who had 38. So it was 41-38. TCU was ranked in the top 25. They were number 15. But I think the big upset was Central Michigan University of Oklahoma State. And actually one of the greatest finishes that you'll see this year. On the last play of the game, CMU threw a Hail Mary followed by a lateral for a touchdown to win. And believe it or not, the play actually wasn't even supposed to happen. There was a penalty on the last, which was the last play of the game for Oklahoma State. They were trying to run out the clock. They threw the ball out of bounds and they gave them intentional grounding penalty. So in college football, if the game ends on a penalty, it's not, the next play isn't supposed to happen. The referees actually got suspended for 2 weeks because of this mess up, and it actually is going to cost Oklahoma State probably being knocked out of the top 25.
Wow. I should have started off with you first with how did the top 10 do? So why don't we go back to that a little bit more?
All right. So you have Alabama ranked number 1. They played Western Kentucky. They won 38-10. And even after the win, Nick Saban was disappointed. So, they're a pretty good program. So for him to say he was kind of disappointed at a win shows that they must have been playing. They must have been playing pretty sloppy. You have Clemson at Troy. Clemson is ranked number 2 in the country. They beat Clemson 30-24. It was an ugly win for Clemson, but it drops them in the latest poll. You have Florida State beat Charleston Southern. Florida State is ranked 3rd. They drubbed them 52-8. It was a big win for Florida State as the offensive rolls. DeAndre Francois threw 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to Travis Rudolph, and then Dalvin Cook also ran for 2 TDs in the win. Now we have Ohio State, number 4 at Tulsa, another win for the Buckeyes under Urban Meyer, and in that win, Mike Weber ran for 92 on 17 carries and a touchdown. to Michigan, who's ranked number 5 at UCF. They had a monster win at 51-14. Wilton Speet threw for 312 yards and 4 TDs, 2 of each to Amara Darboe and Jake Butt. Another nice win.
Go Blue.
Oh,
go
yes.
Go Blue. Go Jim Harbaugh.
And that was another nice win for Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines. He's really put a nice program together for them. I'm looking forward to see how they finish the rest of the season. Number 6, Houston at Lamar. They beat them 42-0. It was a big win for Houston after a 3.5-hour lightning delay. So I can only imagine what they had to go through in the locker room trying to get themselves mentally ready after a long layover. Then you have number 7 seed Stanford, who did not play this week. Then you had Washington, the 8th seed at Idaho. They beat them 59-14. Washington quarterback Jake Browning threw 5 TDs, who tied a school record and barely played the second half. I couldn't even imagine if he played the second half. He probably would have thrown for 10 touchdowns. It was a big drubbing, 59-14. And then you had Georgia, number 9, at Nichols. They narrowly escaped that win. They won 26-24. Georgia scored an offensive and a defensive touchdown in a span of about 2 minutes to hold off underdog Nichols. And to round out the top 10, you have Wisconsin, who number 10 at Akron, who beat them 54-10. It was a big blowout win for Wisconsin as roaring back Corey Clement runs for 2 scores and 111 yards before leaving with a leg injury. Hopefully he'll be okay and can help continue Wisconsin keep rolling along. Then we have a couple big games to look forward to next week. We have number 2 Florida State and number 10 Louisville, which I'm always a big fan to watch Florida State play. They've finally got the last few years, they got back on track. They had a couple down years, but the Jameis Winston they had, and he's doing well in Tampa Bay. And then you also have USC at number 7 Stanford. That's always a big game for the West Coast. USC at Stanford. And then number 12, Michigan State at number 18, Notre Dame is a big game to look forward to next week.
So, Steven, if you had to pick one game on the college front for this coming weekend, for Saturday, what's your big game? What's your big game to watch?
I would say Michigan State at Notre Dame, just because Notre Dame came off a loss to Texas a couple weeks ago, and Michigan State is rolling, so I'd like to see a nice rebound win from Notre Dame to catapult them up maybe the top 25. So I think that's the big game to watch next week is Notre Dame at Michigan State at Notre Dame.
Wow, great update. It's really exciting right now this time of year with so much on the sports scene.
Yes, there is. There's sports all over the place.
You got to have a TV that has like 4, you could put 4 different sports on at the same TV, or go to a good sports bar where you got 50 TVs and you could watch 50 different sports.
Yes, you can do that, or you can do what I do and change the channel every 5 seconds to go on every game.
Now, what I want to know is, Steven, in your household, you got 3 women that are living with you. You've got your wife and lovely 2 daughters.
Yes.
How do you do that? How do you get to watch sports? What's the secret?
Keeping them happy so I can watch my sports. And believe it or not, my oldest daughter is a sport freak. She loves sports. So anything that I'm watching, she's like, all right, let's watch it. Basketball, football, golf, hockey, you name it.
How
she
old
likes
is she?
it. She's 7.
She loves sports.
Loves sports. She's actually a little basketball player.
Wow.
And softball, well, baseball. She said that I don't want to play softball because I don't want to throw underhand. But she'll realize that she doesn't. And she wants to follow me playing golf, and she wants to play soccer. She wants to play it all. But her natural flow is in basketball. Really good athlete.
Great. That's great. Why don't we move over now to Major League Baseball? And a lot going on as we start to wind down with the end of the Major League Baseball regular season.
Yes.
How are the scenarios for baseball looking as we wind down September going into postseason? How's the regular season look?
The regular season is looking great because there's so much going on. You have in the AL playoff picture, in the East, you have Boston, who's controlling that division. In the Central, you have the Cleveland Indians, and in the West, you have the Texas Rangers. Then you have the 2 wild card spots that are currently controlled by Toronto and Baltimore, and behind them you have the Yankees, the Detroit Tigers, the Houston Astros, the Kansas City Royals, and the Seattle Mariners, all within 5 games to get those 2 spots. So it's going to be a really close race to get those last 2 wild card spots, and the AL wild card race is much harder for all the wild card teams involved. You have Yankees have a bunch of games against teams that are 500 or better. The Royals have a little bit less, but which is the easiest, but have the most teams to skip to reach the playoffs. And then you also have the Astros and the Tigers, and both the Blue Jays and the Orioles. All four of those teams also have a lot of teams against 500 or better clubs. So it's going to be a lot of people playing each other and knocking them down and getting in front of them. So it's going to be a very tight race for those last two seeds. You have about 7 teams fighting for 2 spots. And then you also have the NL playoff picture. In the East, you have the Washington Nationals. In the Central, you have the Chicago Cubs. And out West, you have the Los Angeles Dodgers. The wild cards for the National League, you have San Francisco, who's got the first wild card, and the Mets have the second, with St. Louis right behind them. But then a few games back, you have Miami, Pittsburgh, and Colorado, who they really need to get some work going in order to try and catch those 3 teams ahead of them. But pretty much the Giants, the Mets, and St. Louis right now, it's kind of a 3-team race for 2 spots. So, and then you have the Giants playing the St. Louis later in the week. And then if the Mets can play their baseball, they have a great chance to take over the number 1 seed for the wild card.
Awesome. Who are the top MVP candidates that you say?
Well, in the AL for the MVP, you have Mike Trout of the outfield from the Los Angeles Angels. You have Mookie Betts, the outfielder from Boston Red Sox. You have Jose Altuve, the second baseman from Houston. Josh Donaldson, the third baseman from Toronto. And you have Manny Machado, the third baseman from Baltimore. All 5 of those players are phenomenal. Trout has done a phenomenal job playing for nothing. Well, not for nothing. For the team is not going to make a playoffs. He's playing phenomenal. He's helping carry them along. He's got a little bit of help with Albert Pujols, but he's pretty much doing it all. He's scored 110 runs, 27 home runs, 89 RBIs, a 324 batting average. He gets on base at a 440 clip, and he's got 25 stolen bases. The man is great, and he's young.
He's a monster. He's a monster.
He is, but I mean, I'm if I had to say now, right, I would think Jose Altuve, the second baseman from Houston, I think he's got the best shot at winning the MVP. He's really held that team together. They're a young group of guys in there, and now the last 2 years he's been coming on, and everyone wanted to know, is he real? Is that really him? And this year he's come out. He's scored 97 runs, 22 home runs, 92 RBIs, a 339 batting average, a 401 on base percentage, and 27 stolen bases. And this is coming from a second baseman who's not even 6 foot. Wow. Young kid who can do it all. And then in the National League, you have Chris Bryant, the third baseman from Chicago Cubs, the Nolan Arenado, third baseman from Colorado. You have Paul Goldschmidt, first baseman from Arizona, Anthony Rizzo, a first baseman from for Chicago Cubs, and Corey Seager, shortstop from the Los Angeles Dodgers. 2 of my favorites here are Chris Bryant, the third baseman, and Nolan Arenado, the third baseman. They put up very comparable numbers to each other. So, and Colorado was in the wild card chase, but Chris Bryant and the Chicago Cubs hold the Central Division. So, I mean, you have Bryant put up 113 runs, 37 home runs, 93 RBIs, a 299 batting average, 395 on base percentage, and I mean he's even swiped 8 bags. But Nolan Arenado, I mean, he gets to play in the Mile High Stadium, so I hope they don't take that away from him as the ball flies a mile. But he's put up 103 runs, 37 home runs as well as Bryant, 118 RBIs, 291 batting average, a 360 on base percentage. I mean, and he's only swiped 2 bags. I mean, of all the top MVP candidates, only one, and surprisingly, it's Paul Goldschmidt, the first baseman, who swiped 24 stolen bases as an MVP candidate. All the other top 4 have under 10, but the fact that Goldschmidt's a first baseman, and first basemen aren't supposed to steal bags, he's able to do it. So I like Chris Bryant or Nolan Arenado to be the MVP of the National League.
Wow, Steve, you surprised me with your picks. There's one player that was a favorite of mine the last couple of years that had an outstanding postseason, one of the best ever in postseason history. As a matter of fact, the New York Mets would never have made it to the World Series unless it was for Daniel Murphy's postseason. And he's having a remarkable year with the Washington Nationals. So let me hear your take. Why he hasn't made your list?
I like Daniel Murphy. I think he should also be on the MVP candidate, but there's a lot going on in Nationals. You have solid pitching. You have bats all over the place. You have former MVP and Bryce Harper on that team. You have Jason Worth. You have rookies coming up, Trey Turner. You have their whole team is clicking. Even their catcher could be an MVP candidate in Wilson Ramos. He's having a phenomenal year as a catcher. So, not that I'm biased towards Daniel Murphy. He's put up big numbers early. He's kind of cooled off. He's not that hot player that he was in the beginning of the year. And then the unbelievable seven straight home runs I think he hit in the playoffs, 7 straight games, which had never been done before. He started off good, but he's kind of cooled off a little bit.
So am I taking you on Daniel Murphy that your opinion on this is you must have name dropped at least 10 teammates of Daniel Murphy's. Is it because Daniel Murphy has such a strong team that he's playing with that helps that's helping a great deal with his numbers versus your other NL National League picks for MVP?
No, I don't think it's more of a team thing because believe it or not, you have Chris Bryant, who I said before, his teammate Anthony Rizzo is also an MVP candidate. It's just, I believe their pitching staff is really great in Washington. They have Max Scherzer, you have Steven Strasburg, who keeps getting hurt, but he's back and forth. You have Gio Gonzalez, you have Tanner Roark, you have the rookie Lucas Giolito, you have another rookie AJ Cole coming up. They have arms. They have a great back of the bullpen. They have a good middle bullpen. They were traded for Mark Melancon from Pittsburgh to be a closer. So Murphy has put up big numbers. They were big early in the year. And even against the Mets, he put up a quarter of his numbers that he had by halfway through the season were all against the Mets. So not that I'm taking anything away from Murphy. I don't think that his whole MVP candidacy would really work if he didn't cool off. He really cooled off, so I think that's kind of why I don't have him on my top 5.
You know, you mentioned another player, Giancarlo Stanton from the Marlins. He'd be, if he could only stay healthy.
Oh, if he could stay healthy,
he'd be a strong candidate every single year if he could just stay healthy.
I've never seen somebody hit a home run the way he does, and quite some time. I mean, Cespedes hits home runs, but Giancarlo bombs them. I remember watching a game where he hit the top deck in Citi Field, and the ball was still going up. The guy has enormous power, and also he signed in a mega deal. Right. And they got him for years. I like Giancarlo. I think he's a very solid player, but he's so injury prone, and it really hurts them because Miami was having a good season with him, and then even without him a little bit, they're fading now down the stretch. But they have a good team too. I really like the Marlins, and I think that if Giancarlo can stay healthy a whole season with what they got now, I can see them making a run like they did a few years ago against the Yankees.
He's got one of the best teachers and batting coaches in the universe, my dear friend Barry Bonds. So
yes.
he's got a hell of a batting coach.
Yes, he does, and even he's got a great coach too, in Don Mattingly, who was no slouch in the offensive category also.
If they could avoid the injury bug, that team's going to be a solid team.
Well, I mean that's everywhere. If you look at the injury bug, look at the Mets. At one point, the Mets had 7 starters at the DL at one time between the pitchers and the fielders. It's crazy. You look at injuries for all sports. It really brings up questions about what is going on because in baseball, there's so many injuries. Then you look at football, I mean, aside from injuries getting hit or pulling some things, you're always seeing football players on the sideline riding the bicycle, moving around. I wonder if sitting in the dugout for so long really affects some of these players.
There's so many things that affects the ball players.
It really is interesting to see.
Let's move on to regular season end of the year awards again. Let's go to how you see these Cy Young candidates fielding out.
Sure. In the AL, I have Chris Sale from Chicago White Sox, who's a starting pitcher. I have Rick Porcello, the starting pitcher from Boston. J.A. Happ, starting pitcher from Toronto. Corey Kluber, starting pitcher from Cleveland. Cole Hamels, starting pitcher from Texas. And Zach Britton, a relief pitcher from Baltimore. it's very rare that a relief pitcher would win a Cy Young, but his year that he's having, Zach Britton, he's had 56 innings pitched. He's had 60 saves and 63 strikeouts in 56 innings with an ERA of .64, which is pretty good.
Wow.
I mean, even Mariano in his prime, I don't think threw many years at under a 1 ERA. So for the fact that Zach Britton plays in the AL East, so he's constantly got to play the Toronto Blue Jays, the Boston Red Sox, and the New York Yankees. So there's always people that he's playing against that are of great bats. I really like Corey Kluber from Cleveland. He's pitched 195 innings. He's 15-9 with 206 strikeouts with an ERA just north of 3 at 3.08. I really like him. And I also like Cole Hamels, the starting pitcher from Texas. He's got 180 innings pitched, 181 strikeouts. He's a 14-5 win-loss record. And his ERA is about 3.25. The AL Cy Young Award, it's gonna be tight. There's a lot of good pitchers that I didn't name that could be on this list. There's just so many to name. But I think Kluber and Hamels really are the two that I like to see win the Cy Young. And over in the National League, I could go on for days with the National League. You have Max Scherzer from Washington, Madison Bumgarner from San Francisco, John Lester from Chicago Cubs, Jake Arrieta from Chicago Cubs, Kyle Kendricks from the Chicago Cubs, and Johnny Cueto from San Francisco. Then the list goes on and on. I could have added Noah Syndergaard to that list from the New York Mets. I could have added pretty much Steven Strasburg if he stayed healthy. But I would have liked to seen Jake Arrieta pitch a little bit better this year. I mean, last year he was phenomenal. I think he came back down to earth a little bit. But even still, a couple years ago, he was having issues keeping the ball in the park, and he got it together once he left Baltimore and came to the Cubs. So I mean, he's a solid pitcher, but I think hands down, Max Scherzer is gonna walk away with the Cy Young. He's pitched 203 innings. He's got a remarkable 251 strikeouts, an ERA under 3, 16 wins. The guy is just incredible.
Great pitcher.
And as he gets older, he's pitching better and better. I mean, eventually he'll come back down, but I'd say for another year or two, he's going to be the best pitcher in the National League. And you also have Clayton Kershaw, who just got back from injury. He was having a great year until he got hurt. So he may not have the inning limit that he needs. You have Jose Fernandez from Miami. He is pitching incredible. He may not have the innings that he needs. So it really is a tighter race, I think, in the National League than the AL. But you have the one guy, because you have 7 or 8 guys that are all ERAs under 3 or right around 3. But you have Max Scherzer, who is 50 more strikeouts to his innings pitched to strikeouts. So that's a pretty big ratio. I'm a big fan of Scherzer getting it. I mean, I like Madison Bumgarner also, but I think Scherzer's going to edge him out because Bumgarner just isn't performing as well as Scherzer, and that's pretty crazy because Bumgarner is a fierce competitor out there.
I think you're right on about Scherzer, what he means to the Nationals.
Oh, he's big. I think without Scherzer, I don't think Washington wins the division because I think Washington's going to keep the division. The Mets are just too far behind them. I think they're 7 or 8 games back right now. With Strasburg going down, they definitely need to rely more on Scherzer. I mean, they have a solid core of pitchers, so Scherzer is definitely the man for them right now. That's going to keep them the head above the water.
You know how I feel growing up as a kid. I was an extremely loyal New York Mets fan. Loved the Mets growing up, and I still love them, but there's a sentimental favorite of mine over there at the Nationals with Dusty Baker at the helm. What a good friend and class act. Great manager, and I want to see him finally get through with some postseason luck. He's had some bad luck over the years. I know that we've been to a lot of San Francisco Giant games when Barry was playing, and obviously Dusty was the manager for the Giants. A lot of heartbreak there, a lot of heartbreak in the postseason when he managed the Chicago Cubs. So I hope as he's a great guy and he is a good manager, great track record, and I'd love to see him get through this postseason with some great wins.
I have to agree with you. Even though as a Met fan myself, Dusty Baker, I mean, as the Washington Nationals manager, yes, I don't want them to win, but I would like to see Dusty get it because he came so close when the Giants lost to Anaheim in the World Series, and then with the Cubs back when the Marlins won. When the Marlins won, he was over there,
right?
And
right.
He couldn't do it, and that's the Cub curse. I would like to see the Cubs do something. It's over 100 years since they won a World Series, so it's time for them, I think, to win for the Cubs. But we'll go back to Dusty Baker. He's a great baseball mind. They don't come around so often. You have a guy that can manage for so long, and I think it's about time that he finally was able to put a ring on his finger.
You know, just to stay on Dusty a little bit more, besides being a great baseball player and a great manager, he's a much better person than all that. He's a great human being. I've got a great sentimental story about Dusty that I'll never forget. I used to bring my kids when they were really young to Shea Stadium back in those days, and through my friendships with the great Hall of Famer Orlando Cepeda, Cha-Cha, the baby bull Cepeda, out of Ponce, Puerto Rico. Great San Francisco, St. Louis card ball player. I've got to meet Dusty Baker through Orlando, and we became friends when I used to take the kids to Met Giant games when they came in, and I'll never forget when I think my son Jared must have been 8 years old. And every kid, millions of kids across the country want to be bat boys. And Dusty put his hands on Jared and said, boy, when you turn 12, you could be our bat boy for the San Francisco Giants when we come into New York. And I had to tell my son that, Dusty probably says that to thousands and thousands of fathers and kids, and, don't count on it. Trying to tell an 8-year-old boy, don't count on it. But reality happened. Jared turned 12 one day. A call came into the house, and it's Dusty Baker, and said, we're flying in to play the Mets. You're going to have a uniform and a locker. And for the next, from 12 years old to 15, Jared had the unbelievable experience of a lifetime to be the bat boy for the San Francisco Giants, right by Barry, and to be in the clubhouse through all those games and all those years. And Dusty Baker is an incredible, incredible man.
I'll tell you what, that's a great story because it shows how much he cares, and he's a man of his word. Because, like you said, he could have told everybody that, but the fact he said when he's 12 and then he called the house, great. That is fantastic. What a class act.
I don't mean to get off track, but a special man, and I wish him lots of luck this year in the postseason. So let's move on to Rookie of the Year.
This is actually my favorite category because I love watching prospects, hearing about prospects, watching them come up, see how they do. Do they bust? Do they not bust? I mean, it's always sad when you have a top guy bust, but it's part of the business. It's part of the game. So moving forward, you have in the AL, you have Michael Fulmer, starting pitcher from Detroit. You have Edwin Diaz, a relief pitcher from Seattle. Tyler Naquin, an outfielder from Cleveland. And Gary Sanchez, the catcher from the New York Yankees. Michael Fulmer was actually was traded to Detroit in the Yoenis Cespedes deal. Fulmer wasn't one of their top prospects at the time for the Mets, but he sure is pitching it like it this year with a 2.77 ERA, a 1.08 WHIP, and for people that don't know what WHIP is, that's hits and walks to innings pitched. And then he also has 112 strikeouts. So Fulmer has really come on this year. He's really pitched phenomenal for the Detroit Tigers. He's one of the reasons why they're also in the wild card hunt with the rejuvenation of Justin Verlander. I also like Edwin Diaz, a young kid from the bullpen. He took over the closer role for Seattle. He's been pitching to a 2.54 ERA. He has 12 saves, 13 holds. And in 39 innings pitched, he has 70 strikeouts. I mean, that's an incredible ratio. But I think the one guy we really need to talk about for the AL Rookie of the Year is Gary Sanchez. Even though he just came up just recently,
wow.
He has a 348 batting average, a 423 on-base percentage, and he has 13 home runs. Gary Sanchez has done what no one else in baseball has ever done as a rookie. He's the fastest player to hit 11 home runs and is one of 5 players to hit 13 home runs in their first 35 games. I don't know if Gary Sanchez will win Rookie of the Year, but he's definitely the rookie right now that everyone's eyes need to be glued on when he hits. But I think Michael Fulmer, the starting pitcher from Detroit, really has the best shot to win Rookie of the Year just because he's pitched so well in a tough division. You have the Kansas City Royals in that division, the Chicago White Sox in that division. So he's pitching meaningful games now into September, and he's still dominating. If he wasn't dominating still, I'd say maybe Sanchez could come in and maybe scoop it out from behind him. But I think Fulmer is the guy to beat for Rookie of the Year and for the American League. And over in the National League, there's 4 also great players over there. You have Kenta Maeda, the starting pitcher from the Dodgers, who just came over from Japan this year. You have Corey Seager, who was also mentioned in the MVP balloting, the shortstop rookie from the Dodgers. You have Trevor Story, who's the shortstop in Colorado. And you have Albeniz Diaz, the shortstop from Seattle. I'll start with Kenta Maeda. He's got 14 wins. He's pitching to an ERA of 3.29, a whip of 1.08, and 156 strikeouts. He kind of has been their ace this year because Clayton Kershaw went out with the back injury. So for pretty much the bulk of the season, Maeda has been their guy, and right now they're leading their division in the West. I also like Corey Seager. He's put up nice numbers: 24 home runs, 65 RBIs, a 317 batting average, and he's got 85 RBIs. I mean, there are a lot of people on that team, but he's come along nicely. He's played solid defense. He was a top prospect for years, and he's really come into his own, and he's kind of making it his team, even though he's a rookie. There was also a big boom with Trevor Story. He went crazy in the beginning of the year with home runs. He unfortunately got hurt. But he's put up numbers: 27 home runs this year, 72 RBIs, 67 runs. But I think Kenta Maeda is both. I think 2 pitchers are going to win Rookie of the Year this year because Maeda has kept the Dodgers in it. I mean, you have Seager. It's 2 players on the same team. It's kind of hard for one of them to win. Usually, when you have 2 people on the same team going for an award, usually a third guy comes in because it's so hard for people to pick 2 guys from the same team. But I think without Maeda leading them with solid pitching, they wouldn't be where they are right now. And then with Albeniz Diaz, who he came out of left field. Not many people knew about him coming into this year, but he unfortunately got hurt towards the end. He actually was activated off the disables list. So I'd like to see him do something. But for a short guy with not a lot of pop, he's put up 14 home runs, 57 RBIs, a 312 batting average, and a 376 on-base percentage. And this is coming from a St. Louis organization who they have great players, then they get traded away or leave to free agency, and they just constantly get it done. The only reason why he started playing was because Johnny Peralta got hurt in the beginning of the year, and Colton Wong, the second baseman that they had last year, who was a rookie, who he really kind of wasn't playing well this year. Diaz came in, and he hit the MLB by storm this year, and he's been batting over 300 since the beginning of the season.
Steven, I've got to go back to your American League picks. I've got to challenge you a little bit.
Sure.
You were very big on Gary Sanchez. We
Yes.
have a listening audience from all over the country, from city to city. Is your various the way you were about Sanchez, how you feel about him? Is that a pure baseball analogy, or is there a personal tie there, a hometown boy that you're pushing for there for American League Rookie of the Year?
Not hometown, because if the Mets play the Yankees, I'm going to root for the Mets when they play in the playoffs, or if they play interleague. I'll root for the Yankees. I'm all about New York sports just because that's where I'm hometown. But he's done stuff that nobody else has done. 11 home runs in the shortest amount of time. One of only 5 players in all of baseball history to hit 13 home runs in 35 games. He's been their number 1 prospect for years. They always had catchers. They Brian McCann, finally, they've been moving him around to DH a little bit to get him at bats. Last year, I thought he was going to come up, but they didn't bring him up. Before that, they had Jorge Posada. They traded away Francisco Cervelli. They traded away John Ryan Murphy. And now it's Sanchez is here. And I hear a lot of people calling him the Sanchez. So I really think, even if he doesn't win Rookie of the Year, he is going to be the guy, the catcher of baseball future. I really think he's going to overcome in a not next year, maybe not the year after, but he is going to be the next Buster Posey of catchers in baseball, because Buster Posey has been the guy for years. He's a great athlete. He gets it done in the World Series. He's got a few rings, but I think Gary Sanchez is going to be the guy. He is the real deal.
So it doesn't surprise you about Gary Sanchez?
I am surprised at how quickly it happened. I figured he would maybe take a little bit of time to get accustomed to the major leagues pitching as opposed to AAA and low ball and stuff like that, but he's hitting every level he went to. But Gary Sanchez seems to be the real deal. I don't expect him to hit 500, 400 for the year. He's obviously going to come back down to earth, but he's got the power. Matter of fact, the other day, they were trying to intentionally walk him after he hit a home run, and he almost hit the intentional ball out of the park. It ended up being a long sacrifice. And I can only think of one other player that's ever done that I've watched in my lifetime, was Miguel Cabrera. They tried intentionally walking him, and he hit a home run off an intentional pitch, which is, you don't see that all the time. But to see a young kid rookie know that they were going to walk him, that they were walking him, and he almost hit the home run, and they ended up winning because of that sac fly, that they got that extra run, gave him a little bit of a cushion.
You know, you mentioned Miguel Cabrera after Barry Bonds. I looked at him as really the most dominant, scariest guy in Major League Baseball. Dominant.
I think after Ken Griffey Jr., I think Miguel Cabrera has been that guy for the long time. I mean, he came up at 18 years old with the Florida Marlins when they were Florida Marlins. He put up big numbers there. I remember when he was traded to Detroit, I thought, what was Florida doing? They got this young guy playing third base. Why do you ever want to get rid of a young guy? But they were a small market team. They weren't going to be able to afford to keep him, and they let him go, and his career flourished in Detroit. Triple Crown winner, multiple batting championships, home run champ, RBI. Guy can do it all. I mean, and he's only 32, 31, 32. So he's been playing baseball quite a long time, and he's still got a long career ahead of him as long as he can stay healthy. I think he will be one of the other top 5 baseball players in my lifetime, that greatest baseball players that I've seen in my lifetime.
So as we bring this great show to a close, it might be a little repetitive. Why don't we just go back? Who do you see winning the wild cards?
So in the NL, I think it's going to be San Francisco Giants and the New York Mets are going to win the wild card, and that is going to be some playoff game, because it all depends on how the schedule works out, but that's going to be probably Madison Bumgarner versus Jake DeGrom to pitch in to play one of the other 3 division champions.
Wow, that's going to be a great game.
Yes, it will. In the AL, Toronto, I definitely see Toronto staying afloat, because their team has been pitching really well, and they have incredible bats out there. You have Troy Tulowitzki, you have Batista, you have Encarnacion. They just got guys that can hit the ball. They play a good game of baseball. And then I think it's going to come out another team from the East, the AL East. They're so good. Yeah, I mean, you have Baltimore, who they've been pitching well, and they have an incredible lineup with Manny Machado, who's an MVP candidate. You have Chris Davis, you have Mark Trumbo, you have Jonathan Scope. The list goes on and on. Their lineup is great. I mean, the fact that the Yankees just recently took a few games from them to get so close to the wild card, Yankees have nothing to lose. They traded away their big chips in Andrew Miller, in Aroldis Chapman, Carlos Beltran, and they got younger, and they brought up the young guys. And the young guys in the minor leagues, they're accustomed to winning down in AA and AAA. Those teams are winning. So they came up here and they're not going to sit down for anybody. They want to play. You have Tyler Austin, Aaron Judge, and Gary Sanchez all kind of rejuvenating the older guys. And the whole thing is, okay, they traded all their big people. So now, whatever the Yankees do, whatever they got to do. But now they're winning, so it's a win-win for the Yankees. So I mean, I would kind of like to see either Baltimore or the Yankees get in at the wild card, because it really is. It's going to be a mix of, I think, of the AL East. Detroit is all there, but I think it's going to come down to I think Toronto, and I'm going to say the Yankees. I think the Yankees are going to somehow, the magic is going to stay afloat.
You know, living here in the Big Apple and being out here in the suburbs of Long Island, especially, you know, when you're going hot, you're really popular, but when you're losing, you're unpopular.
Oh, yes.
And following the New York Mets and the New York Yankees, Terry Collins and Joe Girardi were not too popular. And I think those two managers have done a hell of a job keeping their teams with all the injuries and what's gone on with both teams. It's really amazing that at this point in the season that the Mets and the Yankees are still in a hunt for a possible wild card.
Yeah, I don't think many baseball enthusiasts would have thought 3 weeks ago that both teams would have been right in the heat of the wild card. They expected the Yankees to keep dropping, and the Mets just with their injuries, and they're here. It's miraculous for us, and it's good baseball for all the country.
Steve, in closing, is there anything that you want to tell the audience?
Enjoy sports. It's a great outlet from whatever is going on in your life. If you need to take a break, if you need to just get something else out there, sports is a great way to open up your eyes and kind of relieve some stress. And there's so many sports that are out there. You have baseball to watch, which is going to be incredible. You have a good round of golf, good tournament coming up. You have college football. You have the NFL. You have baseball, which we were talking about, which is really, I think, going to really, with playoffs are coming, and it's just going to be fantastic. Every pitch means something to everybody. And then you have hockey and basketball right around the corner. So there's always something to keep your mind occupied when you have something going on.
Steve, I want to thank you again for coming into the studio. I know you have a very busy schedule once again with teaching and obviously your family. And I really appreciate that you came into the studio today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. We get to do what I love to do other than teaching is talk sports.
I'm having the greatest time of my life right now doing this with you and doing this every day. So thank you again. Give my love to your family. And, we're going to see you very soon again.
Yes, I look forward to it.
So in closing, we want to hear from all our listeners. Listeners can reach out to us with the free text number for U.S. residents, which is 631-372-8849. That's 631-372-8849. We'd love to hear from all of you. Include your name and location, and we will mention you on future shows. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and hit the subscribe button on the show's YouTube channel. If you would like to leave a comment, use the box below. If you would like to share your story or any ideas and be a guest on future shows, go to deanblechman.com and email me. I would like to thank all my listeners for being with us today. From all of us at The Dean Blechman Show, have a great day.
You've been listening to The Dean Blechman Show, live from Long Island, New York. From all of us here, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. We look forward to hearing your comments via Facebook, Twitter, Skype, and email. And don't forget, you can visit the webpage anytime for the up-and-coming guest list. From all of us here, have a good evening.